UN Director for Human Rights, Louis Charbonneau. Thank you very much for being with us. Can you tell us, first of all, some of the key findings from this report?
Well, the main finding is the one that you just mentioned, which is that the abuses being committed by Chinese authorities in Xinjiang may constitute crimes against humanity. This is very powerful stuff. This echoes a finding that Human Rights Watch published last year in a big report that we did. And so we were very interested to see if they would confirm this. After our report was published last year, Amnesty International also had a similar report which found similar findings of crimes against humanity. So this is something, and we're not alone. There are others who've been speaking about very serious crimes in Xinjiang. So now the UN has joined in, and what we're hoping is that the UN Human Rights Council is going to move on this and is finally going to launch a serious investigation and a formal investigation into the abuses and potential crimes against humanity being committed against Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims. And it's very clear why the Chinese government was fighting so hard to prevent this report from ever seeing the light of day. We have been waiting more than 3 years for this report. That was when it was first announced by the High Commissioner that she would begin working on it. And the Chinese government has done everything that it could to prevent it. They have bullied, they have threatened, but 7 minutes before the High Commissioner was leaving her office and at the end of August 31st, her term ended, the report dropped. It was the last thing she did. And I have to say, it was a bombshell for those of us who've been waiting more than 3 years to see it. And now the important thing is what happens next and what UN member states are going to do to put pressure on China to put an end to these abuses once and for all.
Now, it is significant that she waited right until the very last minutes of being in the post to drop this bombshell, as you called it. But it does hint that Beijing was putting pressure on her. What kind of pressure was Beijing able to put on the human rights chief, and how is it being expected to react now?
Well, I would be very interested in knowing the finer details of the kinds of threats and forms of intimidation that they put on. But we do know that the Chinese government is constantly calling the UN Secretary General. They're showing up in the offices of senior UN officials. They say that all of the allegations of human rights abuses, which have been very well documented by human rights groups like our own, academics, and a number of governments, that it's all lies, it's all fabrications, and no one really takes these Chinese denials seriously. But the problem is China is the second most powerful economy on the planet right now, and they carry a lot of weight. Many governments are intimidated by them. China is the second biggest contributor to the UN budget. They're a major peacekeeping budget contributor, and they contribute peacekeepers to UN missions. So they have a lot of clout in the UN system, and many countries, many governments are afraid of them. So it's extremely significant that this report, even though we had to wait a long time for it, I'm not going to say it was worth the wait, but it certainly was a pleasant surprise, like I said, 7 minutes before the bell when the High Commissioner left office, and we're waiting to see what her successor, we don't know yet who she or he will be, will do with this report, because there's a lot of room for follow-up. UN member states need to act on it, and they need to act quickly, because these are abuses that are going on in real time as we talk right now. There are people who are suffering torture, arbitrary detention, and other abuses in Xinjiang.
So, as you say, members need to act on it quickly. You said also that people have been talking for years about these abuses. Do you think then that this report will actually achieve something, some kind of change?
I certainly hope so. It's not going to be an easy battle trying to get a formal investigation mandated by the UN Human Rights Council. As I said, many countries are afraid of China, but there has been an increasing number of countries willing to speak out publicly about China despite threats of retaliation. There was a case of Austria being told that if they signed on to a joint diplomatic statement condemning abuses in Xinjiang, that they would be denied property contracts to expand their embassy in Beijing. But fortunately, Austria went ahead and signed on to that statement. There were rumors of the Chinese government telling a Middle Eastern country that they would try to block an important peacekeeping force in that country, which was essential to the security of that country, that China would prevent it from going ahead in retaliation. That in that second case, the country did not sign on to the condemnation of China. So this is how they work. So we'll see this play out at the UN Human Rights Council. But if we've seen that roughly nearly 50 states have been willing to come out regularly, speak on the record, and brave potential backlash from Beijing. So hopefully that will translate into votes at the Human Rights Council. There are 47 countries on the Human Rights Council. To get a resolution, we don't need all 47. There are no vetoes on the Human Rights Council, unlike in the Security Council. So you can forget about the Security Council ever doing anything substantive on this. But we'll have to see. It will be a difficult uphill battle, but I think that we've just all been given a lot of fuel, and there's going to be new momentum coming out of this report. And member states who've been saying that they're waiting to hear from the UN before they take a position on this, now they won't have that excuse to fall back on. We have the UN's own findings.